Hello everybody, Andrew Blake from the digitalaudiomanual.com. Today let's take a basic vocal like this. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. And then turn it into something like this. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. Okay, so for today's tutorial, we're making the assumption that we already have a basic vocal in place. If you're having trouble creating a basic vocal and you have the digital audio manual, do a Control F and search for songwriting, and there's a video in there to help you put lyrics together, put down a basic idea, and create a basic vocal track. But now once you have the basic vocal track, what are some of the things we can do to this? And definitely what are some of the things that Cubase can help us with to raise it up and make it sound like more of a production? If we take our raw vocal, let's focus in on the tuning and what tools Cubase gives us for that. Now, one tip I want to give you, when you have your basic vocal, it's a good idea, go up to the option that says Track Versions and immediately create a copy of your existing vocal. You can easily revert back to that in its original state if you need to. With a copy of our vocal, double-click on it to open it up. In the audio editor, first thing I'm going to go to is Vary Audio and turn it on. We're going to begin by selecting everything, hitting Control-A, hitting this correcting pitch option, turning it all the way up, and the straighten curve, turning that all the way up. This is not how we're going to leave it in the end with its extreme auto-tune robotic sound. This allows us to find the incorrect pitches and really zero in on them easily. Then we can relax it later back to a more natural vocal. If I click on any individual segment, I can audition the parts. And you see change. It's pretty easy to hear in this situation when something's out of tune. For example, if I go through these notes, that note right there, if I raise it up, and that's all we're going to do here, is initially go through the vocal and change anything that's out of tune and get it right. Sometimes it's helpful to hear these pieces together. If I click and drag it with my cursor and play it as a loop, can you see change, set me free now. But I can hear another area where I missed a note, right in this area. Just hear one of those is supposed to go up. And sometimes you can use the wave in the background where I can see there's a part here, another part here. I'm going to use my scissors tool and cut this, and I'm going to raise this segment up. Then I have this. Just hear my plea. And that's exactly it. And that's what we have to do is go through our vocal and make those kind of changes so we know everything's in tune the way we want it. After we finish correcting everything, we take our heavily auto-tuned vocal, we begin relaxing the straightened pitch. You can turn it all the way off actually at this point. I want to bring this back to a more natural vocal, just with some of the pitch errors removed. So that brings our basic vocal, still in this very simple state, but just a little bit more pitch corrected. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. Now the next point to attack, we're going to create some vocal doubles, which will thicken up this original vocal. And there's two ways to approach this. You could just duplicate this a number of times and then go through a couple of steps that Cubase offers us to try to make it sound like actual other vocals. But we're going to go the route of actually singing these because that creates such a rich effect. And again, Cubase gives us a bunch of tools to allow us to handle those with a lot less work than it used to be. So in order to record these doubles, I'm going to set up a loop point. I'll just work on this in little sections. As I start playing the vocal, I still keep calling. I'm going to go for about 5 or 6 different takes, just repeating the part over and over again, just singing the same vocal over top of it. I still keep calling. Once I go through it 5 or 6 times, if I expand the lanes, then I can see I have all these takes created of the same thing. But I want to bring these out of the lanes and make them their own separate tracks, so I'm going to do some things to them. So there's a great option. I can just right-click on the track, come down the list, and there's one that says Create Tracks from Lanes. Now, another great option that we have for some of the later versions of Cubase is we can now align these vocals automatically, which comes in very handy. We go up to the audio menu, come down to the option that says Open the Audio Alignment Panel. With this option, we highlight the main vocal, hit the plus sign, then it fills in this area. And then we can choose whatever targets we want and do the same thing. Hit the plus sign, and that'll put that wave in as a target. Now, the beautiful thing about this is we can do all these at the same time, select them all, hit the plus sign, and it fills them all in as different takes. I'm going to take the option to match the words, and when I align the audio, it goes through a process, and then all those words get lined up automatically. Just a great time saver that we have now, where we used to have to do all this manually. If I need or want to be extra picky, I can open these up in the sample editor where I can now look at each individual take, and if there's a word out of line, I can use my warp tool and make super fine adjustments. In this case, that's not necessary, so we move on from here. At this point, I'm going to go to each one of these new tracks, go over to the pan control, pan each one hard left and right, and just keep going through them. Listening back to it, I'll adjust my pre-gain on each track as I fill it in till I get every track set up. Now I have my main vocal, and I have 5 double tracks, panned hard left and right. I still keep calling. If I need to make any changes as far as fades or other adjustments, I'll go ahead and make those. But then ultimately, I'm just going to bounce these down so they're easier to work with. So I'll select all these tracks, go up to Edit, down to Render in Place. I'll check my render settings. I'm going to choose the option that says Channel Settings. Come down and check the option that says Mix it down to one audio file. I'll take the option to disable my source tracks and hide those away. Go ahead and do the render. Then that leaves me with just 2 tracks, one with my main vocal and one with my doubled vocals, and I can build from there. Okay, now let's talk about harmonies. We have our basic vocal line. If we go up to audio, we have an option that says generate the harmonic voices. I'm going to click on that, and then we get this dialog. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you need a chord track in order to take advantage of this option if you want some kind of logical result, because it's going to use the chords to determine the harmonies. In my opinion, every song should have a chord track. If you don't use one, you really want to think about that. But we have a number of choices: how many voices, how to reduce the vibrato, and if we want to open the sample editor. I'm just going to take the defaults of 4, 80%, and unchecked, and say OK. And now Cubase has created 4 new tracks for me, labeling it the bass, the tenor, the alto, and the soprano. I'm going to go ahead and put these in a folder and a group so I can easily change the level. I usually change the pre-gain, but for the sake of our demonstration, I was going to use the fader. And I start bringing up the level of each track so I can get a balance going. I still keep calling. I still keep calling. Till I get a basic balance happening. Next, I'm going to doctor up my harmonies a little bit. I'll go through the panning and change that around. Stalling. Every track has an option in the inspector to delay the time in milliseconds. This is a good option to breathe some life into this as well. I'm going to randomly move this around for each track. Keep calling. I moved them both on the negative and positive side, alternating them. -8, up to 12, down to -15, and up to 9. I'm also going to choose each one, go up to the info line on the fine tune, and make some slight adjustments up and down on that. First one I went up to 5, down to -4, up to 8, down to -4 again. Then the next thing I want to do with this, as good as Cubase does with creating these, sometimes the notes aren't my particular choice. I need to make sure these notes resolve the way I want them. I would audition each section and see if there's any problems. But when I move to this section, I get some resolutions that I'm not really happy with. This goes around endlessly. Right there, it's kind of dissonant. One thing you'll encounter when you're dealing with audio like this in Cubase, if you go over to the chords tab for whatever track you're working on, and you see any kind of option in here, whether it says single voice like this does, or voicings in general, you want to set all of these to off, because what happens is when you open them up in the editor in Very Audio, if any of those voices are turned on, you may want to make corrections to those notes, but if you take them and move them, they just snap right back to where they were. Reason for that is when they're set to voicings and they're following the chord track, I could actually go and change my chords. That would force these notes to change as well. But in this case, I want to be able to change the notes and have some freedom to do that. I'm going to go to every one of these tracks and change that voicing option to off. This won't affect the tuning because the tuning has already been put into place. It just allows me to move the notes around. Now when I open it back up in the sample editor, this goes around endlessly. That voice sounds good. All the voices sound good till I get to the tenor voice, and that's the one that's giving me that dissonance. Opening up the sample editor, see it's this group of notes here. Now what's nice, even though I've turned the voicings off, it still leaves me the segments which I can move through with my arrows, and I can move those up or down however I want. When I identify which one I want to change, I can just experiment. Let's try that for adventure's sake. Sounds nice. And I will continue through it like that, make sure every segment sounds the way I want it to, in case there's any kind of dissonance or out-of-tune notes in my harmonies. So the harmonies sound great, but I like to break things up to get more of the call and response type of result. So this time I'm going to use automation and my mute control. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. By turning that on and off, I can get the result of the harmonies, but also the main vocal coming by itself. Once I've gone through that, then I get this automation lane drawn in where I've muted things out. And then at this point, I'm going to bounce these all down again, just for simplicity's sake. So I select all these tracks, go back up to my edit and render in place, make sure the settings are the way I want, and render this. And now I have those semi-muted out harmony voices on their own track. Now this brings us on to the option of adding background vocals. Again, we're going to use the concept of call and response by making our background vocals fill in the spaces the main vocals leave. I'm going to start by just using a basic VST instrument and go over to the chords tab and assign the live input to chords. This allows me to just hit keys on the keyboard, really in no particular order, and think of it more like a drum pad. Because I have a chord track, Cubase will automatically assign the correct chords and set up the voicings for me. I just need to hit the rhythms the way I want them. So when I start playing, I'm going to try to hit my synth in the spaces around the vocal. Can you see change? Which then creates a synth part like this. And I go through the whole vocal trying to find different ways to add those. If I go back to the beginning, I do something like this. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. Which then creates this MIDI track with 3 separate parts to it. At this point, we're going to do the famous explode the chords again, which breaks my MIDI track into 3 separate tracks. I can see that the bottom notes are tenor, mid notes are altos, top notes being soprano. What I can do with this now is use each one of these tracks to guide my voice and what I'm going to sing for my background vocals. So I'm going to mute out everything except the first soprano one. I'm going to set up a loop point so I can do these a few at a time. And what I'm going to do is the same idea of stacking the vocals like I did with my original double vocals, sing notes over these synth parts and do it 4 or 5 times. Then I'm going to change to the next synth part and use that to guide my voice and sing over it 4 or 5 times, and ultimately take this tenor part from this synth voice and sing 4 or 5 of those takes. Once I've gone through that and pan them and bounce them and do all the things we've done already, and I just use na 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 to sing on these notes. Na. Na, na. Then I added the second part that sounds like this. Na, na, na. Third part I decided I didn't even want it. I just stuck with 2 layers. But when you add those together, you get this. Na, na, na. And then when I add that back to my regular vocal, my doubles and my harmonies, we're starting to get a lot of action going on here with vocals. Na, I still keep calling. Na, you just keep stalling. Now at this point, I'm going to add some ad-libs in here. For me, that involves grabbing my guitar and just coming up with some riffs that fit around the main vocal lines. I get things like this. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. Endlessly, can you see? And then I have to teach myself how to sing that. I wind up taking words from the main vocal line to accentuate them, set up my loop points again. So then I get things like this. I still, you keep on. And on these ad-lib vocals, I'm going to go a little heavy as far as the tuning goes. Once everything else gets going, the harmonies and the background vocals, I need these ad-libs to cut through. So I need everything to be very precise and a little bit artificial. And that's going to make the difference when everything else is happening. So I selected everything in Vari Audio and added heavy pitch adjustment and heavy straightening as well. And then the last actual vocal part I want to put in here, I'm going to create some kind of transition for a special effect. If I take this vocal part that I dragged out of the main vocal, I'm going to make it somehow. I'm going to move down the track a bit and record a little blank audio here. And then I'm going to put all these together and bounce them. It gives me this long piece of audio. Take my range tool, just select this last part. Take it to the end. Then I'm going to open up direct offline processing. First, I'll put a delay on this. I'm going to make it somehow. Then I'm going to add a big reverb as well. Shrink that part down, bounce it again. So I wind up with something like this. I'm going to make it somehow. Right click on it, go to processes, and say reverse it. So I wind up with this now. Make a duplicate of this, and then reverse this again. Put them together. Add a little crossfade on there by hitting X, and then I have this kind of effect. Then you put all that together with the main vocal, the doubles, the harmonies, the backgrounds, and then that vocal riser, and you get this. I still keep calling. Now we're going to process all these vocals. And of course, we should treat each one individually. Different processes for the lead and the doubles. We're not going to do that. We're just going to put them all in one group, one vocal group, and then put one instance of the vocal chain on that group. Now, the vocal chain I created here uses every single effect, and we're not going to take the time now to go through setting this up, but let me give you a quick preview for those that want to pause the video and see what the settings are. Here's the pitch settings, cut filter, the gate, the de-esser, the dynamic filter 1, the compressor, the EQ 1, moving into the character area. Here's the exciter, the saturator, the compressor, the dynamic filter, the EQ 2, the de-esser, and then into the send area. Here's the imager, the delay, and the reverb. There's a few videos in the digital audio manual that walk you through step-by-step using vocal chain. There's also some really good videos out there in general for you to look at to get comfortable with using this plugin. But listen to the difference this now adds to these vocals. I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. It's really amazing what this plugin can do. Let me give you a quick tour of what instruments I used. I tried to keep this arrangement fairly minimal. On the drum tracks, I used the drum machine. I didn't really use any patterns. I actually played every part. No, wait, I take that back. I did use a pattern on the hi-hat. Here's what the kick drum sounds like. And the clap sound. And then the hi-hats finally. If I go to these hi-hats, go to the editor, they're mainly 16th notes going all the way through, but I went to the velocity variance tab and hit the randomize. Gives it a great effect. I just dragged that pattern up into the track and then repeated it as necessary. That's all there is for the drums for now. I used a basic patch on the bass with a simple MIDI pattern. I used 4 different synth sounds here. Second synth. Number 3, and the 4th one, and then some various transitions, crash cymbals. For the arrangement of this, it's basically just 4 bars over and over again with different elements being dropped in and out, which makes it sound like it is not 4 bars because the sounds are constantly changing and evolving. Something to keep in mind when you make any kind of an arrangement. I only kept it to 2 16-bar phrases. First one gives you a little introduction, and then the second one gives you the full vocal with all the parts that we've just created. And for fun, I opened up Cubase's video track and threw in a couple of video clips so we can have a little bit of video graphics as well. So sit back, have a listen, and think about how you can use some of these tools in your own music and productions. Wishing you many inspired moments, and I will see you next time. Keep stalling now. 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 I still keep calling, you just keep stalling. This goes around endlessly. Can't you see change set me free? Now, just hear my plea. All right, it's going to wrap it up for today. As always, if you haven't already, click the link in the description of this video to learn how you can get access to the all-new Digital Audio Manual Preferred. It's the clear, step-by-step solution showing you not only the tips, but all the secret and typically never talked about features that'll take you to a higher level of using your software. If you've been searching for an all-in-one solution to take you from start to finish and learning Cubase and Wavelab and other music software, this is exactly what you've been looking for. So click on the link in the description and come and be part of the clear path to a better learning experience. So today we had a vocal masterclass. We began looking at the lead vocal and how to tune that. We looked at vocal doubles, how to create them, how to align them and then pan them, and finally bounce them to a single track. We looked at how to create harmonies. Then we looked at making background vocals, did a track of ad-libs, and then and a vocal riser. We briefly looked at the instruments and the arrangement, and then we did a final playthrough as we continue on our journey through all our different creative options and the tools that we have available to us. As always, it's great to have you guys here, and I will see you on the next video.